Batman City of Madness issue 1, Christian Ward, both writing and on art. This is the new Black Label book. This is your prestige format, 45 to 50 pages.
Widescreen.
Yeah.
Yeah, they refer to it as widescreen with the slightly different page size.
Yeah. Which, there's a 2-page spread, like a couple of pages in, which is quite stark. It's quite stunning, because you get that first page and then you get this big wide.
The format does excel with the 2-page spreads.
Yeah, because you get it's like Batman in silhouette running across a rooftop in the foreground, but you see like the entire city of Gotham behind him. It's just gorgeous. It's where the book's just singing and dancing.
No one came into this book doubting Ward's art. We've seen that time and time again. We know his stuff is gorgeous.
That is
just
true.
A question whether or not he could write to back it up.
Which leads us to the question, as if to answer that, like, did you like the book?
I did. I will say I was not mixed on it, but I was like unsure still. Probably maybe 60% into the issue, and there's a point towards the end where I'm like, oh, that's what this is doing. And it really got me more excited for the rest of it.
I think I had a similar. I was enjoying it. I wouldn't say I was mixed. I would say I was maybe more positive, and that I was enjoying it. But it felt like the story's fine, but the art is gorgeous, and it's worth being here for that. And then there's a point, and and I appreciated that it was bringing in Court of Owls and stuff like that. But there's a point.
There's a point where you see what the thing was that got out.
Yes, basically, yeah. There's a decapitation and then a full-page spread, and then once that hits, it's like, oh, okay, I think I love this now. All right.
Yep, that's the exact moment where I say up to that point, I'm like, this is perfectly good. I say mixed because it wasn't like blowing me away with the writing, but it was fine. Art was gorgeous throughout, obviously.
Yeah,
and then it got to that page where it's a seemingly a Batman decapitating someone, and it's like, well, that was weird. And then the reveal, and I was like, oh, I'm in.
Yeah, we get a little bit of Alfred's perspective, talking about his day and like waiting up for Bruce and how it wrecks him. Obviously, there's a bit of Two-Face stuff. Batman shows up to deal with Two-Face, and Two-Face is asking for help, which is very interesting because later on we find out that the doctors think there's a third personality now. But then when he talks to Two-Face, Harvey's like, no. We're Two-Face. We know who we both are, and it's just us two. But there is another voice sort of being transmitted in. It's not another personality. There's some sort of voice coming from somewhere else. And I was like, okay, that's fascinating. That's a good idea.
The very first bit with Two-Face made me question like when this was set in terms of Batman's career.
Sure.
Because I think there's a guy that calls him like Half Face or Other Face or something, but like distinctly not Two-Face.
Mm.
And I was like, that was weird. And I guess it's just this guy being weird.
Yeah.
Because obviously, as soon as Batman gets there, it's like, oh, Two-Face, this isn't his usual shtick, or back to his normal shtick.
Yeah, and later you see Barbara, you see the Robin outfits in the cave,
Yeah, it's pretty clear this is later Batman.
Yeah. I do like the idea, though, of Two-Face moving into a building that was half finished, so it's actually a two-faced building.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of backstory. Batman explains why it was unfinished, but I enjoyed that. So, and we're also... So there are two big plot threads we're introduced to, is this businessman who turns out to be a member of the Court of Owls, who kills this guy who's asking too many questions in the elevator. Because they're talking... It was teased at the start. The opening scene had some news in the background about a sinkhole in Gotham, and this is what they're talking about in this boardroom scene. But it turns out this guy's from the Court of Owls, and he's like, no, we live down here. If there's this underground river is causing problems, we're going to deal with it. But once he gets down there, we get this betrayal of another Court of Owls member who basically wants to unleash whatever this monster is that's behind this big door. And this is something they've been guarding.
Doesn't even seem to believe there is like a real monster. Like almost the way he talks about it, like, oh, it's just a myth.
Yeah, he thinks it's a myth, but the other one, the main one we met, is adamant, no, we can never open this door. This is, but then he sees the doors. Yeah, but then he sees the doors opened, and the other, he's not a Talon, sorry, he's just one of the owls. He tries to kill him, and he ends up fighting. It's actually a Talon who comes in and kills this sort of betraying member of the Court of Owls.
Yeah, he talks about, oh, you're from like House something or other. Like there's these
Yeah.
different factions within the Owls, clearly, which I think is fascinating. We haven't really seen any of that, but it makes sense.
Yeah, and it's this maybe entire house that might have like sort of changed their beliefs, and they wanted to open this door. And we only get a silhouette here, but we see it looks like a Batman, in silhouette.
Yeah,
coming out of this door. This made me, of all things, this made me think a lot of the extended cut of Alien 3. Because there's an entire section in Alien 3, in the extended cut, not the original cut, where they actually trap it in this room that only has one entrance and there's no way out. And there's this devout crazy guy who's starting to worship the alien, who opens the door and lets it back out. And this was making me think of that subplot.
I can see it.
It's completely cut out of the theatrical cut, but it's in the longer one. It's a better it's not a great movie still, but it's a better version of the movie.
It's a low bar, but yeah.
But yeah, so this Talon gets heavily injured, as they point out later, because they want to try and bring him back to snuff. Was it just me, or would they try to imply this was someone, maybe Azrael or something like that, because of the long hair? It's just the art. It was the way they revealed him in a full page spread. I'm like, I feel like I might know who this is, and the only person I could think of that kind of fit his description was Azrael.
I can't say I got that, but I might have just missed.
I might be reading too much into it. It may be nothing. It was the way they kind of talked about him, and then they did this full page spread revealing him lying in the table with the long hair, and I went, is that someone? I don't know.
I mean, it could be. I think the way it's colored, it's kind of hard to tell. Because he's like almost like grayed out. It's like a very grey body, right?
But either way, whatever this monstrous thing under the city is, it's now unleashed. And the other subplot that we're following this issue is this kid, this sort of like early teens character, who's coming to Gotham, and we don't know why at first. He's in the opening scene buying the bus ticket or whatever it is. And when he arrives to Gotham, he's looking for the police station. And the backstory is that his father was killed in Gotham by a corrupt cop, and then they later, to explain it, said that he was a drug dealer to sort of like get the cut off scot-free. But he was actually a piano teacher and innocent. Notably black.
Or at least as far as this kid believes was innocent. I'm inclined to believe him, but they could potentially swerve down the line.
I mean, they could, but as far as we know right now, he's just an innocent black man who was murdered by a corrupt cop. And
she's very believable in Gotham.
Yeah, and the kid's shown up here, and he's got a gun, and he wants to murder this cop. The cop actually notices he's being watched by this kid and sends over who else but the terrible trio who he's working with, apparently, to try and rough the kid up. Which we'll get to that in a little bit, though, because that's where the shit hits the fan. That's where all the plots, well, not the Batman plot, but the other plots all converge there. Batman goes to Arkham to talk to Two-Face. There's a great 2-page layout of him walking through the halls of Arkham, and it's where the colors get a bit more abstract here as well.
I love the approach to Arkham, the way it's got like Arkham's face, like his head as the silhouette behind the manor, and like this red, and like he's driving, the Batmobile's driving up the red road, and the colors, when it goes into Arkham, very reminiscent of Dave McKean's Arkham Asylum.
Which is very intentional, because Batman actually mentions on the way there that he once spent a night in Arkham, and that's a reference to that story that McKean did with Grant Morrison. But yeah, the colouring and the art gets a lot more abstract once he gets in there, and it is very reminiscent of that book. I'm a sucker for when he starts talking about Amadeus Arkham, building the place and the history of the Arkham mansion.
I love that stuff.
Yeah, I'm into that. It was one of the best things in the video game as well, was just all these teases of the history of the place. There's a little bit with Barbara talking to Alfred and trying to ask how he is, and Alfred sort of says he's fine, and Barbara gives him shit for like, why do men never just say how they are? Because you're clearly something's troubling you. Although it does acknowledge that maybe Batman wouldn't exist if men just talked about their feelings, which I thought was a really fun little jab from her.
It's the men would rather become Batman than go to therapy.
Although she did become Batgirl, though, so there's a little bit. I mean, very different path to get there, but still, I'm just
yeah,
little bit there. I did enjoy the panel though of her looking at her outfit, and the reflection was putting the cowl on her face. I thought that was a nice little touch. But yeah, so he goes to talk to Two-Face, as does Batman, and that's where the conversation about the third voice, this voice coming from somewhere else, it's not one of his personalities. And that's a really interesting thing, because as we realize we're getting into cosmic horror, the idea of someone particularly someone who's psychotic potentially, getting messages through the ether is a very interesting idea. And sure enough, we get this idea of it's like when Two-Face sees it later, it's like another Two-Face, but instead of being split down the middle, it's the face is split like across horizontally. So you get like the bottom half is all, the disgusting, burned half, and then the top half's normal. And it's basically saying, "Hey Harvey, we've got a message for Batman. Tell him that the Batman from below has the boy.
Batman below,
yeah, and he's going to make a Robin out of him, which means we should go back and talk about all that stuff with the kid. This is
just really briefly before we do.
Yeah.
This is really interesting because it implies there are more forces than just the one that escaped. And I think when you're reading the first conversation with Two-Face and Batman, there's a assumption maybe on your part that this is that thing projecting somehow into him, but this is clearly something else because this is warning him. This is warning Batman.
This is another entity, possibly a good entity, or at the very least not as bad.
If not good, it's at least countering Batman below.
Yeah. So the big thing that happens here is that the terrible trio go after the kid, and the kid tries to hold the gun up to them, but he's a kid, he's scared, he's never used one before, I suspect. It's certainly the implication I get from his nerves in the scene. That said, though, obviously there's a very intentional thing he says here, where when they say you're just a boy, he says, "I'm not a boy, I'm vengeance." And obviously that's a Batman line. Like, that's a very intentional choice to give him that. And right away you're like, oh, this is a kid who could become a Robin. And of course, what the book's doing here is that it's going to twist that, because it's not Batman who finds him, it's the Batman below who finds him. The Batman below swoops in and decapitates the shark member of the terrible trio.
I love we don't know it's the other Batman at first, because they're just like, oh shit, Batman's here. Nope, not dealing with that.
Oh, sure. I mean, on the decapitation page itself, I kind of assumed it wasn't. Yeah, I assumed it wasn't him.
But the first couple of pages where Batman's there.
Sure, yeah. But yeah, it's this great page where just this red streak of blood that really sticks out against the blues in the background. And the kid's just like wide eyes in shock. And then,
when you see from behind there, it says "Worry Not." I love the lettering. No box, just this really jagged, harsh lines.
It's also a little distorted. There's like some chromatic aberration going on with it.
Yeah. And then also, it is so long. It's very Kelly Jones-esque.
Oh, sure, yeah. And then the full page spread, the reveal, holding the shark head in his hand. And I say shark head, it's just a mask over a head, obviously, but he's holding this head and he says, "He can't hurt you now, child." But notably, this Batman creature has Cthulhu-esque tentacles coming from under his cowl.
Look, the moment this got to Bat-Thulu, I flipped from, okay, this is okay, to I am reading every page of the rest of this series no matter what.
This is where it became what it is. This is where it became, and there's an argument to say it should have been a bit more engrossing perhaps from the get-go, but it was good before this. This elevated it into, holy shit, okay, this is an idea. And then the pages right after this as well are like, okay, we're doing cosmic horror. The very next couple pages is this ethereal darkness of swirling sky, and it's it's the text saying "We are Gotham" is got like the fainter, like bigger version of it behind it. It's like it really gives you this idea of like a chanting happening as opposed to just. I
think it's really interesting because it's not just chant. Like the bottom panels are where it seems "We are Gotham." That you could read it as like a chanting, like like there's an echo, right? But then you see it on the other ones, like the text. After guarding the door for 100 years, the creature has escaped at the top. And I think for me, it plays more just like it's this this projection into the void, this huge space, and it's like this echo back, not like an echo from an audience, but just like there's this like. It's hitting like a wall so far away almost.
Yeah, it does look a void. It looks like this is whatever's beyond that door. This looks like the space that's beyond the door is just this empty darkness, effectively.
Yeah, there's like hints of shapes, like sand dunes or like mountains, almost, or region. Like it's hard to tell intentionally.
But yeah, so this is like, the Court of Owls guy waking up, and the other owls saying what's happened, and they're like, okay, this other house in the owls is not to be trusted. We have more, traitors in our midst, kind of thing. And they talk about how, well, we don't have another Talon at the ready, so we have to try and fix the one that get injured by the Batman below, like right now. And they're like, okay, well, Fear bested them. We have to get them ready, like, quickly, like get them patched up. So we get this big. It's actually a 2-page layout now. I'm looking at it, but the second half of it is almost entirely this Talon with his outfit off. Is this long-haired guy who I suspect we're going to learn more about as time, given that just because they're giving him this moment of like, hey, we're resuscitating this Talon and putting him back out there. I suspect we're going to get to know him a bit more because of this.
Yeah, whether or not it's someone we know, it's hard to, like I say, maybe you're right that it's Azrael. I don't think so, but
I'm not putting money in that. It's just because of the way this full page spread, revealing him just made me think it was someone we knew.
That's fair. I think, though, it might be someone who Batman has a history with, at least, potentially. Maybe they're taking that idea from the original Court of Owls story where Dick was supposed to be a Talon at one point, like he was marked for that. I kind of taking that idea. I don't think this is Dick by any means, but the idea of it being someone that Batman should have known or would know is kind of part of this.
I think what's interesting to me about this, obviously they're saying, hey, we have to go and work with the Batman. We have to, this thing has to be taken in no matter the cost, so we have to work with Batman because he's the one up above that's doing all this shit. Like, that's interesting conceptually that they're going to try and just cooperate with him.
I love how confident this this member of the clause is. Like, oh, what if Batman refuses to help us? And like, he won't. Like, he won't. Batman will join because this is that bad. Like, he will join us in this.
Well, once he understands the severity of what's going on, he's not going to have a choice, basically.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. I think. So that's cool. I think what I like about this is that between the fact that they were in the video game that came out, last year or 2 years ago now, I think it's interesting that the Court of Owls are probably the newest thing that is just now become one of those Batman villains that writers can use. Like, this is probably how people who are older than us felt about Bane, because Bane was this new thing in like 1992 that was like, okay, you're interested in this new villain, and he's just for this story. But for us, he was already established to the point where it felt normal for other writers to bring him out whenever they wanted to.
I think it's really interesting that around that period, there is a few characters like that have stuck around, like Bane, Azrael, even Harley Quinn, right?
Yeah.
There's been a lot less of that over the recent years.
She's a different, obviously, origin. Raz was just a few years prior as well. He wasn't that old at that point. I just think it's interesting because I feel like Professor Pig stuck around from the Morrison run. I feel like Court of Owls is easily the biggest thing that's like, oh no, this is now just a staple of one of the Batman's rogues gallery where you can whip out the Court of Owls now if you want to.
It's possibly, it's clearly Snyder's legacy to the Bat mythos. Obviously he worked on Batman a lot. He did a lot of stuff, but that's the thing that he long term is going to be remembered for, as he introduced the Court of Owls, right? As part of the Batman mythos, and they are sticking around long term, absolutely.
Yeah,
they're just there.
They've popped up in other people's books for sure since he stopped writing, but the fact that they're in this, which is this is your sort of standalone Black Label prestige miniseries that's kind of using continuity, but it's not in continuity, I think kind of establishes them as, no, this is like an evergreen Bat villain concept that can just be used whenever now.
And they've popped up in some of the animated movies, not even the ones that are like not directly adapting Court of Owls stuff, but they've been there.
Oh, didn't they do it in one of the? They did it in that. Was it the Gotham show? The one with well, maybe the Gotham show as well. But I was thinking they did Gotham Knights as well, a TV show, which only lasted a season. I think they may have done some. I don't know. Maybe it was Gotham. I don't know. They were in one of those shows. There was definitely some Court of Owls stuff in one of them. So
and like you mentioned the game as well. Like they pop up a lot in terms of for their relative recent creation. They're about a decade old, give or take.
It's just interesting to me that we're at that point now where when they revealed that this was a Court of Owls thing, I thought, oh, that's cool. And, I don't think Snyder's run's that great. I think it goes really downhill as it goes on. But the Court of Owls as a creation, I think, are pretty solid. And yeah, I was kind of, that's kind of neat that we're doing a Court of Owls thing here and we're tying them into a cosmic horror thing because they do kind of feel like a cult. So them being tied to the preservation of this thing behind the door is actually kind of neat. So
it feels old school Lovecraftian in that, okay, we've got this cult protecting a cosmic entity under the city, right? Like, it definitely has that vibe to it. Like, obviously, it's Gotham, but if you wrote this as, oh, it's a Arkham, not Asylum, but Arkham, the town / city from Lovecraft mythos, and just change a couple of the names, it definitely plays almost exactly the same. I think that's why it works here.
Yeah, and this final cliffhanger, which I already got before he said it, like when I realized that this bat, Cthulhu is taking this kid, I already immediately thought, oh, this is going to be like a twisted, like he's not going to be Bruce's Robin. This is going to be like this evil Cthulhu version's Robin. And what does that mean? What does that mean for what this kid becomes? Is it going to like inspire the worst possible impulses and what his desires and need for vengeance is, as opposed to what Batman did for his Robins? So, and maybe the story of this book is really going to be the fight for this kid's soul in a lot of ways, maybe, depending on where it goes. So, beyond just stopping, Bat Cthulhu from causing the apocalypse or whatever he's going to do. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, no. So I was into this the entire time. I thought it was a decent enough written book with fantastic art, and then it just shot to the moon with the reveal of what it was about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So very, very good. Excited for issue 2. I don't know if this is a 3-issue or a 4-issue prestige book. But
ooh, that's a good question. I don't actually know.
Yeah, I don't know.
A lot of these have been 3 because the page count kind of works them out to roughly a 6-issue mini.
Yeah, there's been a couple of 4s though, which is why I can never remember.
Couple. Yeah.
What are you rating it, Connor?
I'm gonna give it an 8.5, which it almost feels like other issues are easily going to be hitting 9s. If it continuing from the back third of this book. But I think it's a bit of it's a slow build for that first 2/3 of this. But I'm okay with it. It's all in the same issue, right? That's very intentional pacing, but it does just hold it back just from getting quite that 9 for this issue.
Yeah. I think I'll probably agree with that and give it the 8.5, kind of for similar reasons. I actually like a lot of the things individually as it's building up. I like Batman's sort of dissecting of what Two-Face is up to in the background to that building that he was in. I thought was an interesting little bit, because there's not a lot of just straight Batman stuff in this, but I appreciated that. I like the idea of the voice coming to Two-Face and it being mistaken for a third personality. I thought that's a really cool idea. Probably the only thing in the art I didn't love maybe was how Two-Face actually looked. It was probably the only thing in the whole book where I was like, I'm not necessarily into the choice here that they've taken, but it's a minor quibble, all things considered.
Just go on.
But the art in general obviously is fantastic. There's some great spreads. Bat Cthulhu as a concept is fantastic. I love the Court of Owls inclusion, the build up to this door being open, because I got excited by what it might be, and then obviously once we got to see it, it was fantastic. And the idea that it's going to create its own Robin and what that might do to the kid psychologically is exciting. So, no, very good.
Absolutely. I was just searching to see how many issues it is, and I found it was like the original announcement that gave it to me. It says 3 issues. What I thought was interesting is, given I don't remember reading any of this. Obviously, we pre-read it at the announcement, but that was months ago at this point. It's a pseudo sequel to Arkham Asylum, Serious House on a Serious Earth, and listed Snyder's Court of Owls and Jim Starlin's Batman the Cult as an inspiration for the series. I mean,
that makes sense. Yeah.
All of that, it shows in the book.